This is an anime that I never really expected because it was, at the time, already around 3 or 4 years into its life, so when the announcement came out, I was pretty hyped about it. King's Raid was one of those mobile games that I played pretty religiously back when it was still brand new on the western side of the world, before I knew about the ruin that was gacha games. From what I remembered, it didn't really have the most outstanding kind of story, but I found myself in love with its characters for one reason or another, as they either had a pretty amazing design to them, or I enjoyed their interactions while playing through its story. I recently decided to re-download its mobile game and play it again, so I thought it was the perfect chance for me to talk about the anime because I really love the game. Please keep in mind that while I might make a few comparisons here and there, I'm not going to be talking about this as an adaptation, as mobile game adaptations tend to have very significant changes for better or worse, so I feel it would be better viewing how it does as its own self-contained story. Welcome to the kingdom of Orvelia, where after a period of peace, demons started appearing again. Through this, we are introduced to Apprentice Knight Castle, who is said to be the son of the legendary hero who ushered in that strained peace 100 years ago. While the story for King's Raid isn't the most unique one out there, it manages to capture interest with that line alone, and hopefully it would reel you in just enough to find yourself hooked. In the game, this story starts out with Castle looking for his friend who went missing during an expedition, but in the anime, it's because his scouting party was attacked. It's not much of a difference, but the way it was handled made the anime have a more reasonable motivation for Castle to leave, especially when his journey to become a hero doesn't come off as completely coincidental. I'll be blunt and outright say it. The start of King's Raid is tough to get into. The anime is doing its best with what it was handed, but the game's beginning bits of the story are not very good. If you decide to watch this, unless you're already a fan of the game, you'll more than likely be relying on the characters to find enjoyment for the first 2 or so episodes. After that, the greater plot starts coming out and it becomes a lot more enjoyable even for a casual viewer. However, that doesn't mean that all of it is bad. We get to see the inner workings of the kingdom through a plotline that runs parallel to Castle's journey, and it's to a degree that I don't think the game even replicates. After that point, the story gains a much better pacing to it, and balances itself pretty well through the various characters and their stories. The hero's journey is on the slow side of things, but it manages to fill that time with a very meaningful look at the rest of the world to show just how the recent demon attacks have affected the lands. These smaller plots that run along with the main one are pretty hit or miss with bits of the writing, but the ones with a more singular focus manage to make me lose myself in it. Past the halfway point, the plot starts to intertwine and it becomes really hard to stop watching it. If you had any difficulty getting into this at the start, but you're still watching by now, you're going to be enjoying it quite a bit. A lot of the early build-up that you go through makes this part a lot more interesting than you would imagine, considering the majority of the anime is following a similar plotline that we've seen for ages in anime at this point. This half of the anime is truly where the best of the story lies, and it's actually pretty close to the mobile game's story, just with some deviations here and there. As you would imagine, the best part of this anime is its characters. They might not all be the best in their writing, but they work really well together and I feel they complete each other with how they interact. The anime fleshed out the rougher parts of them from what I remember when playing the game, and I found myself loving the main cast a lot more than I originally did. I especially loved seeing so much of Reet in the story as you didn't get a lot of him in the mobile game, because he's essentially an event character. He's my favorite male character in the series, so it made me happy seeing him and getting to know Black Edge more personally. I was also pretty amazed to notice that I really loved Castle by the end of the anime, as the series uses a hero's complex for him. The hero's complex is a very tough writing device to use, as it has to be balanced out really well or you'll end up with a lopsided character. There's very few instances where I've seen people use this correctly, but King's Raid is one of those, albeit a bit on the flawed side. The trauma side of the complex was explored, and it complemented the healing side even if it could have been better, but that's usually the part that makes this device so tough to work with. Overall, while this anime isn't the best, it's certainly not bad either. The best way to really describe King's Raid's Successors of the Will is that it's just good. It does the job that it set out to do, and I feel it was enough to make the players of the mobile game happy. I'd like to see another season someday to adapt the rest of Castle's journey, especially with how the anime is open-ended to tease that. It'd be nice to eventually see my other favorite character that appears only after what was adapted as well.